Hey, it's Craig Syracusa, and welcome to another episode of Walk in Faith, the show where we go beyond the image and we discover who our guests really are. You might know them from TV, the big screen, or even the world of sports, but do we really know who they are as a person? Do we know what motivates them? Do we know what inspires them? Well, that's what we're here to find out.
On today's episode of Walk in Faith, I'm going to be sitting down with author Leah Libresco on her new book, Building the Benedict Option. Up next on Walk in Faith. Thank you so much for coming to Brooklyn and St. Joseph's Co-Cathedral. I wanted to find a great spot for you. I figured this would sort of fit the book. But like I was saying off camera, love the book. And you know, I always wonder why certain books or certain topics come to me. And I started to read the first few pages and I had to put it down. I had to tell my wife, I said, Dana, this is exactly what I'm going through in my life personally. Like I'm trying to get closer to my faith, trying to, increase my prayer life. And as I'm reading the book, I'm like, this is exactly what I'm, going through. And one of the things, which before we get into the book, is now you weren't raised Catholic, right? You sort of
No, I grew up as an atheist. I became Catholic in 2012.
Did anything happen in your life that sort of moved you closer to your faith or to faith in general?
It's kind of a long story, but the essential, thing that kept leading me towards the church is that I was really sure that morality was something objective and transcendent. I'm a big nerd, right? So I kept getting into the philosophy of it and how you ground that belief. And ultimately, I didn't think it worked without God.
And now, when you first decided, or first sort of, found your way to faith, was it a difficult transition? Was the church welcoming? Did you have a lot of friends and family that thought like, Leah, why are you going down this path? What was it like?
I kind of came in partly through my college debate group, which was very philosophically minded and had a number of perhaps unflattering nicknames, but one of them was the Catholic Factory.
Oh, God.
Because when you get people together to like 2 a.m. talk about what is truth and how do we know, a bunch of them become Catholic. And so my friends were kind of more used to conversions than I think is usual in college. And one of the things I really benefited from is just being a convert was kind of like shooting off a flare gun where everyone's like, all right, well, like now that Leah's Catholic, we have to help her, right? And people, really invited me into their prayer life, told me about the saints that moved them, and took care of me to help me get my sea legs in the faith.
And then you wrote this book, The Benedict Option. Did you write the book before you created this prayer group? Tell me about that. And what was the intentions behind writing this book?
Well, I kind of got interested in Rod Dreher's project about the Benedict Option initially, about how to create thicker Christian community and pray with others. And in DC, which is where I lived at the time, folks were discussing it, critiquing it. I got a bunch of people together just to talk about what we could do in the next 2 weeks to 2 months to kind of pray more and be more with each other as fellow Christians. And that's the focus of my book, Building the Benedict Option, that wherever you are in that near term, what can you do to connect to and pray to others? And writing the book really came out later as we were doing all these things, trying out all these projects. I think by writing, I kind of had a big stack of notes before I ever had a book proposal.
So how long ago did you start writing this book?
Oh gosh, I don't know technically when I started writing the book because I'm a blogger. So, I'd be writing things that wound up in the book kind of from the beginning 3 or 4 years ago about community and the barriers to it and what we can do to reach out to each other.
So the Benedict Option, or just the idea of it, is it for someone that's a devout Catholic or Christians, or is it for someone that's sort of exploring their faith?
Well, I really like the way Ross Douthat described it, where he said it's a ratchet effect. It's from wherever you are, taking one step deeper into your faith and closer to others in your faith. So you could be someone who's a daily Mass-going Catholic and still find a way to kind of extend a little more of your prayer life to others and with others. Or you could be someone who's kind of fallen away, not sure how to reconnect, and just, asking someone to pray with you an Our Father once is one more step from where you are.
And I like, too, the way you sort of describe how to put together the event or the gathering. Like you have a lot of details on whether it's, use plastic versus paper and how to invite people, but it sort of gives you a sense of, like you said you open up your whole house, so if people want to have conversations in the bedroom, or if they want to have conversations in the living room, like it sounds like it's a great event. I mean, how often do you do these?
Well, it kind of varies. In DC, I would do one big gathering once a month on the first Friday of the month, where anyone who wanted to come over could come over. They just had to give me a hint so I knew how much food we needed. And that might be 30 or so people.
Wow.
This is before I lived in a studio apartment in New York.
That's a big gathering.
And so that was like one big thing, and there'd be smaller things going on. And now in New York with my husband, we do kind of smaller, more focused things more often, where we got folks together for the Feast of the Immaculate Conception and just had, I don't know, a smaller group of people, less than 10, and we just asked people to bring hymns or poems or art they loved about Mary, and we'd share dinner and share the things we loved. And it was a really simple but beautiful event.
And how long does the event last usually, would you say?
Oh gosh, I have to kick people out. You know?
Really?
They live out in Brooklyn, they live out in Queens. You'd think with an hour-long subway, like they'd leave, but they don't. It's a nice thing about opening your home. People lose track of time, but as the host, I keep track of time because I have to do the washing up and go to bed.
And you don't like when people help you, I remember you reading.
I try and say in a very complimentary way, there's no reason that we'll stop enjoying each other before it's actually time to leave. So I'm not waiting for the party to peter out. You all have to leave anyway.
So you've created these events. Has it sort of sparked any of the people that attend your events? Do they create their own events? Has it been
I've been really moved kind of hearing some of the things people have built. I have a friend who does now a weekly potluck every Monday, which is more than I would take on right now, to be honest, and just has over anyone who wants to come. Another friend of mine started a monthly lunchtime prayer group. Just people come out from wherever they're working in DC and just pray together on the first Friday of the month. My copy editor edited the book and then told me that because she was editing it, she invited people over for lunch when normally she feels self-conscious about her house and doesn't want to do it. So I think really everything that people do where it's true, it makes you vulnerable to have people over, to let them into your life, and everything that gives them the courage to share themselves just makes me so happy.
Oh, I like that. And when I was reading the book, I found myself stopping a lot and just sort of reflecting. And one of the things that you mentioned in the book about expressing your faith, and I know some people feel self-conscious or, they have problems with, sort of letting people know that they're Catholic or Christian or even saying God bless you. And one of the things that I always find interesting is during like Ash Wednesday or certain times of the year when society says, you know what, it's okay for you to proclaim your faith and let people know that you're Catholic or Christian. Why is that? Like when I was a kid, I remember it being different. I remember being, proud. I'm proud to say I'm Catholic. But now it's sort of like we're afraid of offending people. What's changed?
I think one thing that's hard is that people interact with almost everything in their life primarily through the political sphere. So, when someone knows you're Catholic, they're like, okay, well, what exactly does that mean about which candidates you support and which policies? And you're kind of like, obviously my faith influences those things, but that's not the heart of my faith. It's harder to make room to talk about what Catholicism is. And I think one thing that really strikes me on Ash Wednesday is just how many people are secretly Christian that I don't know in my office, in my neighborhood, and that I really the whole year could have been praying with these people or talking to them. And it's so weird that it's on Ash Wednesday, a day of fasting, that there's this hidden abundance that's revealed.
I agree. And I always see too, and not talk about celebrities, but you see celebrities come out and say, and I'm like, I like that. But at the same time, it's like there's a whole year that goes by where you have this platform. They should use it. They should say, even if it's just God bless you or just, I don't know, something. But don't just wait for society to say, it's okay now, social media, it's okay for you to say, I'm Catholic or I'm Christian, I'm proud. Like, I think people should use that platform, use that time to express their faith throughout the year.
I think one of the real gifts in how to do it also is that when you just say, I'm Catholic, the person you're speaking to hears whatever they think of when they think of Catholic, which may not be what you're meaning to communicate. And it's kind of easier for me, at least, instead of just going like, guess what, everyone, I'm Catholic, because they already know at this point. Saying like, oh man, yesterday was the feast of Newman, who I really like. I like his weird novel about conversion based on his own conversion. I like his sermons. But kind of starting the conversation from what's moving us in our faith, which is something that our friends respond to our love, even if they don't share it in that moment.
I want to get into that when we come back. We'll be right back with Leah Libresco. So another place, though, that I stopped was one small thing becomes a strand and the tapestry of praise. And I think you said like holding the door open. And I always say, I don't say the door, I always say return your shopping cart, which I got from someone else. But can you tell me about that? Like, how do these small sort of acts of kindness or these small acts that we do, how does that have an effect on our life and other people?
can tend to think of love as something that's sparked by like big titanic passions, and that's true for certain kinds of relationships. But in friendship, in family, and everything else, a lot of our love is really moved by kind of the classical love of Storge, the love of familiarity. Almost the way that as you're on your way home, like you're really fond of the stop sign on your block because you see it every day, and you're like, I'm almost home. Like, hello, stop sign. We can develop that for other people, including people we don't like, right? Because no one actually like loves that stop sign on its own merits. It's just the presence in our life. And having kind of repeated small encounters and small dependences on other people really opens the door to loving them, in that small, familiar, fond way. And honestly, it's easier for us too. It's sometimes a little much to go, wow, this person frustrates me, but let me try and jump all the way to total Christ-like love. It helps to start by being fond and just building up those small connections through everyday mild things. Clearing plates for someone, just having them over, making space to hear how their day went, really tutors us in love.
And then you also mentioned too about the commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. How difficult is it for us to follow that commandment? Because you mentioned about love. I mean, how hard is it? I mean, because a lot of times we're so concerned about ourselves, consumed with our own sort of priorities and our own needs, and we forget about the other person.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think especially with God that we always think about, okay, well, what time will I make in my day for God? God technically has given me the whole day and my whole life. So which like little bits will I pick out for him? And I'm as vulnerable to this as anyone else, where I kind of found that by default, my prayer was kind of around scheduled specific times, mostly at home or in church. And those were God's times, and everything else was kind of whatever. And that's one reason why I really like trying to pray outside my house in places that don't feel intuitively like the space for prayer in the way this beautiful church is, but on the subway, on a walk, so that I can remind myself, this time is for God. This space is for God. There's nowhere where if I feel the impulse to pray, if I hear him calling me, I can't answer.
And a lot of people too, they don't realize like they think prayer needs to be this, like you need to go to the church. Like I pray all the time, right? In the car I have conversations and I'll thank God for a parking spot and I'll thank God for certain things, like all the time. And I think people, they forget that that's all that he wants. He just wants a conversation, a relationship. Like we don't have to wait till Sunday or certain days to, we want something. Just have a conversation with him. And I think that's important. I think people forget that.
And I think it's actually, for me, one of the real blessings of the Catholic faith as a convert, that the range of prayers that we have that we know are pleasing to God, the Rosary, the Our Father, really gives me a way that I can pray anytime, particularly at the Our Father. It's short. If I want to pray, I can never be too busy to pray at Our Father. And I know that prayer is pleasing to God, and it takes the pressure off of how well am I praying today, and still leaves me room for any spontaneous prayer I want to add myself. But God takes such good care of us in that he really, anticipates all our anxieties that could lead us to turn away from him and gives us the tools we need, however alone or nervous or self-conscious we are, just to give the words he gave us to praise him.
I love that. And there was another thing that really you said about, and I never thought of it this way, you said to serve where you're needed, not where you think you're needed. And I'm always trying to figure out, what is God calling me to do? And I try to determine his voice for my own. And when you wrote that, I said, wow, I really have to think about that more and reflect and say, am I really doing what I want to do and where I think I'm needed, or where God is calling me? How do you know where you're called? What do you think? Where do you think God's calling you?
Well, I think one of the things I want to do is make enough space for God to speak through other people to me. Especially as someone who likes opening my house, who likes hosting things, who likes planning things, I'm pretty vulnerable to just planning kind of according to my own will and figuring out what I think other people need and then giving it to them, right? And one of the changes I made was, when I talked about those first Friday dinners, those big things, it was really different for me, not because it was big or, a big lift. It was different because it was unstructured. I tend to hold events where I'm like, we'll watch this movie and then we'll discuss it and then we're going to do the following, it's all, I've got an idea and I'm going for it. And with the dinners, we did pray, we'd get together, we'd do evening office, we'd have dinner, then there'd be nothing. And then eventually dessert and night office. And that nothing made me anxious because I didn't have a plan, I couldn't tell if it was working. But I was really trying to leave room for people to tell me what they needed without being trapped in what I had planned for them, and room for the Holy Spirit. I think it's kind of in those moments of silence and what feel like almost passiveness that we leave more room to hear God.
I like that. And then you also said, which is about sometimes you delegate things for the future, Leah. What are some of the things that you sort of have delegated or you've put off?
Well, one of the things that my husband and I want to, but we still haven't made happen yet, so we keep trying to figure out what would it take for this to be possible in the future. How can we help our future selves be able to do it? Is Easter caroling.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I love going to the vigil mass on Easter, with the bonfire and everything, and it's so beautiful. But then the weird thing for me is I wake up on Easter Sunday and I've done church already, and there's less that happens on the feast itself for me. And we've always thought that there's so many beautiful Easter hymns, and we don't make as much of a moment for singing them on Easter as we do for Christmas carols. We keep wondering if we'll find a year where we can kind of organize friends to even just go around or stand on a street corner and sing Easter carols.
That's a good idea. So can you tell me what you would do? You would find a few friends and you would
the big barrier
because this is interesting. I've never heard of this before.
Well, we go visit my husband's family for Easter so far while we've been married. So it makes it harder to plan things in a city where we don't live. But if we wind up doing that this year, we might actually just reach out to some of his parents' friends and the friends of his sister who's still at home, in high school, and seeing if there are other folks who want to come over and sing it. To be honest, it's not even that crazy an idea, because on New Year's Eve, friends of his family have this beautiful tradition where they just sing hymns to welcome in the new year, and they're right next door. We went over and just sang our way into 2018.
I think that's a great idea. Well, let me know if you need help.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with Leah. I mentioned to you about simple acts of service, and you mentioned some of them that sort of, you like to do some of these smaller acts because anticipating or waiting for God to give you sort of these bigger sort of responsibilities. What are some of the smaller things or smaller acts that you've done so far or that you continuously do? One
of the small things I do is just sometimes baking at home and then sending cookies to friends who I know are going through difficult times. I'm already praying for them, but then sending them something is a kind of tangible pledge of what I'm praying for. And it makes me feel better, honestly, even before it does anything for them. It's so sad sometimes when someone's going through something very hard and I don't have anything I can do that will really make it all right after a death in the family or a frightening news from a doctor. To do something that isn't about solving it, because that's beyond my power, but just about compassion, suffering with, and just being present. And one of my friends said back to me at one point, which I hadn't even thought of, is just, she's a single mom, and she said that when I sent cookies, it was the only time someone else has cooked for her. Wow. Since she can't remember how long. And I think, especially for folks who aren't married or live away from their own families, it's small things that are part of living with people who love you that people can miss the most, that are easy to provide, but so seldom offered.
I agree. Those little simple acts that we take for granted, they mean so much. We don't know what people are going through, and that's why, like we said earlier about holding the door, I always think about that. And the name of the show is Walk in Faith. Yeah. And I try to think about every little thing I do, because those simple little acts have such an effect on someone. Like I said off camera, I love to give people rosary beads and not say anything, because you don't know what they're going through. So you always have to sort of walk in faith, because God's watching us, but everyone sees what we do. It has such a ripple effect. And you have so many beautiful things throughout your book. Like the other thing too, you spoke about the survey. And when I read about the survey, I said, I knew, not that I knew, but I had an idea. Like, it's similar to what we're saying, like atheists, I feel like a lot of people are searching. We're all searching for answers for something. And now when you did the survey, what were the results?
So I was trying to look at how people respond to public acts of religiosity, mostly for myself. I wanted to know this, and since I was a journalist, I could kind of really go into it. When I pull out my rosary beads on the subway, how weirded out is everyone by that? And one of the things I found really helpful about the results is that Christians tended to overestimate how uncomfortable people were made by just seeing other people visually pray, with a rosary, for Jews laying tefillin or anything else, right? But what we tended to underestimate and then be a little insensitive to is how nervous people get if I just, say to you, like, do you want to pray? With kind of the idea that, they can say no. It's not awkward. But, someone, especially the less they know me, the less they know what my reaction to that no is going to be, and kind of the tenser they get. And so that's really helpful because it felt like it gave me much more permission, really, to pray myself wherever I want, to leave people to ask if they want to. And also just to be more careful in how I offered prayer to other people, knowing they might need more of an explanation of what I'm doing rather than just take it on trust that I'm not here to bully them or it's not a hard sell. So when my husband and I did the chalking of our doors for Epiphany, we were having folks over. It's the 12th night after Christmas. We were also having a party where we read the play Twelfth Night aloud, right? And so we had a mixed group of people, and we just said, look, we're going to be chalking our doors and doing the blessing for Epiphany. Anyone who wants to come be part of that, just come a half hour before, and then we'll start the play reading at our event start time. And we kind of gave people the chance to decide for themselves. And either way, we were explaining a little what we were doing. So some folks who skipped the prayer still wanted to know about what we were doing. Then for the rest of the year, they still could see the door chalking and know a little bit about what that had to do with our faith in the liturgical year.
I like that. You have great ideas. I mean,
that one was my husband's idea.
Okay, I'll give him credit. One of the things I felt like the essence of the book is love. I mean, there's a lot in the book, but the essence, and you mentioned, especially early, you mentioned about when you became a Catholic, and you picked St. Maximilian Kolbe, right? Who, died in the Nazi camp. You said he was an icon of love, and I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with him, but can you tell just a little bit about his story? Yeah,
well, St. Augustine is my confirmation saint, but St. Maximilian Kolbe is one of the saints who kind of helped make martyrdom understandable to me, because outside the church, it's easier to look at martyrs and go, wow, it's just kind of this festival of carnage, this fascination with violence. But that's not what Maximilian Kolbe's story is at all. He's a priest who's imprisoned in a concentration camp during World War II. And there was an escape attempt in the camp, and to punish all the prisoners for the attempt, the Nazis picked a few men by lots to be killed. And one of the men, who was Polish, cried out that he had a family. And so Maximilian Kolbe stepped forward to take his place. And they locked them up in a cell to starve to death. And the thing that I think is so remarkable about his story isn't just that first moment of generosity, which is enough, right, as a witness. It's that he led the other prisoners in prayer and song while they were in prison. And he was the last one to die, somewhat miraculously, just in that how long he lasted. And he was killed by a lethal injection finally. And what it testified to there wasn't so much just the defiance of the Nazis, but in a real sense, the powerless of the Nazis, in a place where they had every worldly power of force over others, the power to imprison, the power to kill. They couldn't take away his power of love and prayer, and no threat can take that away from us, and no outside force can take God away from us. And so even in the middle of the grave sin that they committed, they couldn't extinguish love. And that was such an extraordinary testament. And if he, in the middle of murder, can do that, how much can we, all of us, just find that we're radically free to love each other, that no outside force can ever quench or stop our love. It's only our own sinfulness that stands between us and what Kolbe did.
And I think that was sort of the essence of your book. That's what I got at the end of the book, and it made me think about Bishop Ford, and now I'm reading a lot about Father Capodanno. I mean, what they went through, and in the end, it was all about love.
Yeah.
What's next for you? What do you have next?
Well, one of the things...
Beyond the interview,
one of the things I'm excited to do, and if anyone else wants to do it themselves, is that on December 8th, the Trappist martyrs of Algeria are being canonized. And I love the film of Gods and Men about their lives. So that's something where I'm planning to invite over anyone who wants to come to my house, Catholics, non-Catholics, just to see this story of their life, and then, to pray for everyone who wants to pray for their intercession. I just think the liturgical calendar is what's next for me, right? Where, it's always just being tutored in the examples of all these saints and all the ways they lived out what Christ calls us to.
Is there a way that people can contact you, or how could they find you on social media, or do you have a website?
Well, folks can always find me at leahlibresco.com, and I've got all my contact email there. And to be honest, if people do want to come over to celebrate the monks of Algeria, they are welcome to. Just email me first so that I know how much food to make.
And would you do plastic, paper, or china for that event?
I only have 12 plates, so anything above that is definitely disposable dishes. And I don't have a dishwasher, so honestly, like more than 8 is disposable dishes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I advise everyone to get a copy. I mean, this was a great book, and like I said, it was exactly what I needed at this point in my life, and I appreciate that. I hope people, take your advice and create their own sort of Benedict option and invite people over to pray, because, it's about expressing our faith. It's about coming together in community, and just, we're all on different journeys of faith and different journeys in our life, and I think this has been extremely helpful.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. I had the opportunity to sit down with Leah Libresco about her new book, Building the Benedict Option. And like I said earlier, this book really spoke to me personally about how do I become closer to my prayer life? How do I increase my prayer life, I should say. And there was a lot of things that stuck out in this book, and like she said, love, the essence of love. She spoke about St. Maximilian Kolbe and about when he was in the Nazi camp. But the one thing I think we should all take from this book is the fact that we should increase our prayer life, and we should create these events where we come together as a group or a family to sit and pray and to celebrate our faith. We can learn a lot from Leah Libresco, and the first thing we need to do is pick up a book and read it the way I did and enjoy it and really reflect on the message of love. Love is the essence. Until next time, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like I said, always remember you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through your words and actions. Thanks again.